Hello, this is Max. Today you will hear the story of how a woman decided to change her life completely, and how a man and his mistress tried to stop her from. In the beginning scene, we are introduced to Georgia Bird, a timid and humble woman who lives a frugal life, depriving herself of luxuries, including love. Georgia works as a salesperson in the cookware section of Cragen's department store in New Orleans. She is also a member of the Baptist choir and has a deep passion for cooking. Despite her love for food, she refrains from tasting her creations due to her fear of gaining weight. Instead, she takes photographs of her dishes and keeps them in a scrapbook labeled Possibilities, which brings her joy. Unfortunately, Georgia faces constant harassment from her boss at work, who is dissatisfied with her performance no matter how hard she tries. One day, her boss scolds her for giving leftover food to beggars, insisting that the store is not a charity. Despite explaining the store's tradition of helping those in need, her boss hands her a magazine and orders her to read it. Frustrated with the pressure she constantly faces, Georgia immediately throws the magazine away. However, there is a bright spot in Georgia's workplace: her secret infatuation with a co-worker named Sean Williams. Sean is handsome, and Georgia has even included him in her cherished scrapbook as her ideal husband. Unbeknownst to her, Sean also harbors similar feelings for her. Fortunately, during the Christmas season, they have a serendipitous encounter when Sean follows the delightful aroma of Georgia's cooking. He asks if he can taste her food, and after trying it, he compliments her culinary skills and reminisces about his mother's cooking. This brings them closer, and they engage in a deep conversation. But suddenly, Georgia becomes clumsy and accidentally drops the spoons, feeling self-conscious in Sean's presence. Apologizing, she bends down to pick up the utensils but accidentally hits her head on a kitchen cabinet door, causing her to lose consciousness. In the subsequent scene, Sean quickly rushes Georgia to the health center located within their store, where she undergoes a quartz scan. Regrettably, the results deliver devastating news. The scan reveals that Georgia is afflicted with terminal brain tumors caused by a rare neurological disorder known as Lampington's disease. The doctor informs her that she only has 3 weeks left to live. Georgia is left in a state of shock and disbelief, struggling to come to terms with her diagnosis. Alongside her medical prognosis, she faces the daunting reality of having to cover her own medical expenses, as her HMO plan falls short in covering the high costs of her treatment. As night descends, Georgia sits at her dining table, consumed by a dark mood. Her appetite has vanished, and she withdraws from interacting with others. She reaches for her treasured scrapbook of possibilities, flipping through its pages and feeling the weight of her unfulfilled dreams. Tears stream down her face as she contemplates the injustice of her situation. However, amidst the turmoil, a sense of clarity settles within her, prompting her to accept the reality she faces. Georgia resolves that she will not spend her last moments confined to a hospital, undergoing treatments that will only marginally extend her life. Instead, she determines to embrace the time she has left and live the life she has always yearned for. With newfound determination, she vows to spend her remaining days pursuing everything she has ever desired. The following day, Georgia marches into her boss's office, resolute in her decision to quit her job. However, her boss responds dismissively and refuses to engage with her, fueling her frustration. Overwhelmed by anger, Georgia seizes her shoe and smashes his phone. She stands up to him and boldly announces her resignation. Despite her boss's attempts to persuade her to stay by offering a raise, Georgia remains steadfast and walks out of the store, ready to pursue her passions. Subsequently, she heads to the bank to liquidate all her assets, determined to live the luxurious life she has always longed for. Afterward, Georgia embarks on her long-awaited dream vacation at the opulent Grand Hotel Pup in Karlovy Vary, a spa city in the Czech Republic. During her flight, she encounters an inconvenience with the passenger seated in front of her and expresses her frustration to a flight attendant. Unable to resolve the issue on her own, the flight attendant seeks assistance from a senior colleague who offers Georgia a first-class seat as a solution. Grateful for the gesture, Georgia promptly switches to first class, unaffected by the cost. In this upgraded section, she is served exotic wine and a lavish turkey. Upon landing, Georgia waits for a taxi to transport her to the hotel. However, her impatience gets the better of her, and she decides to rent a helicopter instead. As she arrives at the hotel, her arrival catches the attention of onlookers who wonder about her significant presence. Georgia confidently enters the reception area to check into her room, only to find out that it isn't ready yet due to her early arrival. Undeterred, she requests any available room and is offered the presidential suite, which comes with a price tag of $4,000 per night. Unfazed by the cost, Georgia willingly pays for the suite, further drawing attention to herself. While waiting for her room to be prepared, Georgia happens to spot the owner of the store where she used to work, Kragan. He is an eccentric millionaire who always spends his Christmas holidays at the same hotel. Through a conversation with a hotel staff member, Georgia discovers that Kragan is accompanied by his mistress and will soon be joined by influential political figures, Senator Dillings and Congressman Stewart. With her arrival at the luxurious Grand Hotel Pub, Georgia's determination to make the most of her remaining days becomes evident. She indulges in a designer wardrobe and fully immerses herself in the hotel's spa services. Her adventurous spirit leads her to try snowboarding and even attempt base jumping off a dam, all while savoring the exquisite meals prepared by the renowned chef Didier. Throughout her stay, Georgia remains kind-hearted and genuine, earning the appreciation of the hotel staff, except for the unfriendly guest services manager, Miss Gunther. Meanwhile, back in Georgia's hometown, Sean grows increasingly worried about her absence and seeks information from the doctor. Learning about her terminal illness comes as a shock to him. Concerned, Sean visits her home to check on her, only to find that she is not there. However, instead of encountering Sean at Georgia's home, her nephew approaches him and reveals Georgia's scrapbook, which unveils her trip to Europe and her feelings for him. This revelation strengthens Sean's determination to win her back, leading him to make the decision to fly to Europe. Meanwhile, Kragan and the other influential individuals are enjoying their dinner when Congressman Stewart notices Georgia's captivating beauty and charm. Intrigued, they decide to approach her and engage in conversation. They join her at her table, eager to learn more about her. Senator Dillings and Congressman Stewart express particular interest in Georgia's plans for the weekend and agree to accompany her. While they converse, Kragan grows increasingly suspicious of Georgia's intentions, questioning whether she harbors any ill will toward his business. However, the others are drawn to Georgia's carefree spirit and genuine nature. After a leisurely stroll, Georgia returns to the hotel and encounters Kragan and the group engaged in a game of chance. They invite her to join, and she readily accepts. Despite being unfamiliar with the game's rules, Georgia boldly bets a significant sum of money on the number 17, repeating this choice 3 times in a row. Surprisingly, her lucky number 17 proves to be fortuitous, and she wins all 3 bets. However, instead of feeling elated, she becomes angry with God, perceiving the timing of her luck as a cruel irony given her limited time left to live. Disheartened, she decides to cease playing and cash out her chips. With the assistance of Kragan's assistant, she converts her chips into cash and is astounded to discover that she has won a substantial amount of $100,000. As time passes, Kragan's initial curiosity about Georgia takes a darker turn, jealousy. Concerned that she may represent a rival company, Kragan becomes increasingly paranoid, fearing that Georgia has been sent to lure his business partners away from him. This sense of unease intensifies as Georgia develops close relationships with influential figures like Stewart and Dillings. In an effort to uncover any potential secrets or ulterior motives, Kragan bribes his cunning assistant, Miss Gunther, to investigate Georgia's background and gather information by snooping through her belongings. In the subsequent scene, Mrs. Gunther proceeds to search Georgia's hotel suite, and in her search, she stumbles upon a heartfelt letter written by Georgia. The letter contains instructions for the disposal of her remains after her passing. Touched by Georgia's sunny optimism and self-assurance, Miss Gunther finds herself in a moral dilemma. On one hand, she has been paid by Kragan to uncover incriminating evidence, but on the other hand, she genuinely wants Georgia to experience happiness in her final days. After careful consideration, Miss Gunther decides to confess to Georgia that she has read the letter, urging her to return home and spend her remaining time with her loved ones. Taking Miss Gunther's advice to heart, Georgia prepares to depart for the airport the next day, eager to return home. However, her plans are swiftly disrupted when she discovers that an avalanche has blocked the road, leaving her stranded in the Czech Republic. Sean also found himself on the other side of a snowdrift, stuck in a cab and unable to reach her. Determined, Sean abandons the taxi and braves the snowy conditions, trekking on foot in search of Georgia. That evening, Chef Didier extends an invitation to Georgia to assist him in preparing a lavish New Year's Eve feast in the hotel's kitchen. Amidst the festivities, Didier publicly acknowledges Georgia's contributions and expresses gratitude towards her. However, Kragan, filled with rage over the attention George receives, attempts to humiliate her in front of his associates by revealing her true identity as a saleswoman in one of his stores. Nevertheless, Georgia remains composed and unfazed, emphasizing that she never shared personal details about herself and that people had made assumptions without knowing the full truth. She openly discloses her illness as the reason behind her extravagant spending and her decision to embrace life to the fullest. However, Georgia, not wanting to make anyone uncomfortable, gracefully excuses herself from the table after wishing everyone a Happy New Year. Witnessing Kragan's insensitivity, his associates are appalled and choose to support Georgia, leaving him alone. Even Kragan's secretary decides to abandon him, having had enough of his behavior. Feeling dejected and embarrassed, Kragan retreats to an upper floor of the hotel and perches himself on a ledge, contemplating ending his life. When Georgia learns of this, she immediately rushes to the scene, determined to talk him out of it and change his perspective on life. George reminds him that true happiness comes from kindness and being less driven by greed. Back in Louisiana, George's doctor makes a startling discovery. The corpse scan that had initially diagnosed her with Lampington's disease was, in fact, incorrect due to a faulty scanner. She is not terminally ill after all. Eager to share this good news with Georgia, the doctor hurries to find her. He arrives at her home and meets with her nephew, together sending a fax to the Pup Hotel to inform Georgia of the mistake. In the meantime, Sean successfully overcomes the snowdrift and reaches the hotel, where Georgia is engaged in a heartfelt conversation with Kragan. It seems that she has managed to persuade him to reconsider his drastic decision. Despite the awkwardness of the situation, Sean summons the courage to confess his genuine feelings for her. Overjoyed, Georgia gladly accepts his proposal, sealing their relationship with a passionate kiss. Downstairs in the lobby, Miss Gunther discovers a fax from Georgia's doctor and rushes to deliver the life-changing news to her. When Georgia finally learns the truth, she screams with sheer happiness, joined by everyone present. With a fresh perspective on life and a determination to pursue their dreams, Georgia and Sean return to Louisiana as a loving couple. Together, they open a restaurant called George's Joint, which quickly gains attention, even attracting renowned chef Cyril Agassi and Chef Didier, who make appearances to celebrate George's newfound success. The final scene reveals that Georgia has transformed her book of possibilities into the book of realities. Her friends from the hotel, including Kragan's secretary and Miss Gunther, have all moved forward to lead happier and more fulfilling lives. Kragan himself, having sought solace, has joined a spiritual retreat. The movie concludes on a joyous note as Georgia and Sean exchange vows, promising to be there for each other always. Thank you for watching. You can subscribe and give this video a like. Goodbye.